Welcome to this session. I'm Tackley. I'm Director of Architecture at Guardian News and Media. I'm going to be talking about how we, over the last couple of years, have democratized attention data inside our company. First thing is a correction to the title. We are no longer Guardian.co.uk. As of a couple of months ago, we became theguardian.com, and we moved wholesale our whole site across to .com as a representation of the fact that we're now a global brand with a reach way beyond just the UK. My aim today is to convince you that by ruthlessly eliminating complexity in software, in architecture, and in data presentation, even small teams can make a big difference to an organization. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to The Guardian and who we are if you don't know us. Then I'm going to give a live demo, hopefully, of the tool that we've built over the last couple of years. And then I'm going to talk a lot about how we came up with that team, how I came up with that tool, how we got to the point we are today, and some of the lessons that we have learnt as a result of doing that. So The Guardian first published a newspaper nearly 200 years ago in 1821. Today we publish a newspaper in the UK, The Guardian, on Monday to Saturday, and on Sunday we publish The Observer. We have continuously broken ground with our groundbreaking journalism. So a whole load of stories, most recently the shocking revelations around how much our governments have prepared to spy on us and track our activities online from Edward Snowden. We created a website in 1995, and today our website gets between 4 to 5 million users a day. We also have a Kindle app, an Android app, an iPhone app, and all of that kind of stuff as well. Uniquely, Guardian Media Group is owned by the Scott Trust. Now, the Scott Trust was created in 1936, when our proprietor of the time saw his years were nearly at an end, T.P. Scott. And it exists, as it says there, to secure the financial and editorial independence of The Guardian in perpetuity. We do not have a proprietor. We have a trust that owns us and allows us to do more interesting things than other media organizations. So 15 years ago, we took the bold step of putting all of our newspaper content, or all that we could, or that we had rights to do so, live on the web, publicly available and free to read. And our content is still free today, and we still publish all the content we can on the web. That was amazing. That was an astonishing thing to do at the time, and apparently would undermine our paper product. But it did not. In fact, as a result of that foresighted action, we've moved from being the 6th or 7th biggest newspaper in the UK to now being the 3rd biggest English language newspaper website in the world. And we've done that in 20 years. That's quite astonishing. So I'm going to talk today around this tool, which is called ophan. I'm not going to explain to you why it's called ophan, but I'm happy to tell you afterwards. And let's try a live demo. If you could pause your BitTorrents for a moment, and we'll see if we can make this work. Okay, so this is a tool that is available to anybody in The Guardian. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Let's have a look and see some of the things that we can take a look at. So the very simple one is a graph. So this is a live graph. This is the real live system. So the yellow line on that graph shows us traffic today. The light yellow line shows traffic yesterday, and the grey line shows us last week. So today, actually, we're having a reasonably good day. We had some interesting traffic overnight. Okay? But we can break that. Importantly, we've designed all of this around what makes sense to our users, the editors and journalists inside The Guardian. So we can break that down by section. So if I'm the comment is free editor, I can have a look and see how my bit of the site is doing today. And in fact, I can also say, well, actually, where are people accessing this data? If we go back to here, we can break down by country. Okay? So you can see, actually, we're getting a fair amount of UK traffic right now. US had a really good run overnight. Australia's getting a bit. quite a good traffic from the rest of the EU, excluding the UK, and so on. But there's a whole set of things we could filter by. So we could filter by which platform, we could filter by time period, we could filter by the section, we could filter by which app, whether it's mobile apps or which bits of our website, we could filter by browsers, filter by country, and filter by referrer. So far, so good. That's kind of boring, plain analytics. Let's have a look at some more Guardian-specific stuff. So the top 20, this shows us what's really popular, what people are reading on our website right now. Okay, this is showing over the last 3 minutes. On the left, there's content pages, which is articles and videos and things like that. On the right are our other pages. So typically that's our homepage. So /UK is our homepage for the UK and the rest of the world except America and Australia, who have their own homepages. So our homepage at the moment is getting 2,885 page views a minute on average. Our top story is a story about server crashes of GTA Online. Not exactly groundbreaking liberal journalism, but we're getting traffic on that. We can see from if we look at the content pages, we can see not just how much traffic it's getting, the percentage of traffic on our website. We can also see actually where we're getting that referrals from. And yep, so the top one, the GTA one, that we're getting really good Google traffic from. The US one is largely internally promoted, and the Ed Miliband story is getting a bit of Twitter traffic as well. And actually, it looks like that Reddit has just appeared recently. More importantly, obviously, all the filters apply to this page as well. But let's go and have a look at some of the detail of this. So let's have a look at that Ed Miliband story. So if I click the eye, I can now see actually how many page views that's had so far today. I can see some charts around where it's getting its traffic. So this story is getting most of its traffic from internal promotion on the website. It's mostly in the UK, not surprisingly. It's around the leader of the opposition in the UK. And mostly it's desktop traffic. We can see the tweets that have driven traffic to it. So Richard P. Bacon, whoever he is, tweeted that. And we got 877 referrals as a result. Most importantly, there's this graph here, which shows actually how that traffic has changed over time. And so we can see here, we launched this one about 10 o'clock this morning, UK time. The light blue is a bit of Twitter traffic, so we got a spike in Twitter. And then we get the big blue spikes are our internal promotion. So I bet that about 10 past 11, we put that on our big picture on our UK homepage, because that's the amount of traffic we drive from that. You can see we took it off at about 20 past 12. Interestingly, we took it off while traffic was still strong, so that's an interesting choice. But we're still getting good traffic, so it's still probably top article on the homepage. Actually, should we have a look? Let's find out. Yeah, it was okay. It's second one down at the front. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at this one. So if we go and look at this really interesting David Cameron story around bread making. Great. It must be a slow news day today, I think. One of the things we do is click on this view in ophan, really simple bookmarklet. But then that can take me and allow me to see the traffic for that article. So you can see, actually, we published that article about 20 past 12, and you can see we put it on the front almost straight away. And it's been on the front ever since, getting a reasonable amount of traffic from that position. One of the key things that's driven a lot of this is we've been looking for ways, we've been trying to ensure that this is a tool that enables journalists and editors to explore and learn about their traffic. You know, one of the things you could do, if you see a spike here, so there's a bit of Twitter spike here, actually, let's click on it, and I see what the referrals were in that 1 minute interval, right? It's really critical that we have presented this data in a way that makes sense to people who aren't data people, right? They just want to be able to click through, they want to be able to see stuff, and they want to be able to understand what's going on with their content really simply. Hence that bookmarklet. So it's on the homepage. You just drag the bookmarklet to your bookmark to your toolbar, and that's a widely used thing inside the Guardian. Let me show you one last thing, which is interesting. So slightly more techie techie thing is around browser performance. So we've got a bit of JavaScript running on our pages on the Guardian site. And we capture the browser performance API stats. So effectively, we have real user monitoring that tells us at any point actually what the load times are. So if we filter this down to desktop web, so this is genuine real user experience of our website. So our desktop website, generally, the load event is firing about 12 seconds after load. Now that's really poor. We're doing stuff to address that. If we look at our mobile site, that's a lot better, right? It's around 6 or 7 seconds for page load to complete. And now this is really interesting as a development department. This is really interesting at helping us understand when we've done releases the impact of that. If I expand out the time a bit, because we had a bit of a blip earlier on today, not on the mobile site. Yeah, OK. So you can see about 20 past 10 this morning, massive spike in page load times. Now, I could show you the email chain where people were discussing that. We think it was a really badly performing ad that we pushed out on our sites. We saw that straight away, got it removed, saw the impact on our readers, and got it removed. The insight it's giving us as techies is as great as what it's giving to the journalists as well. One of the other key things around this is if you visit the Guardian site now, by now, that data is showing up in ophan. Typically, the lag is less than 5 seconds. In fact, typically it's even less than that normally. It's a real-time system that's showing what's going on right now. It's used by over 400 people inside the Guardian. That's a big proportion of our organization. Vast majority of journalists and editors have some view of ophan up on the desk all the time. Our CEO uses this tool to demonstrate our open strategy to our partners and to other companies. So it's been a huge success and began to transform inside The Guardian the way we think around data and the way we can do better at enabling people to consume our great content. So how did we create a tool? How did we end up creating a tool that is turned out to be so useful across the company? How did we know what to create? So ophan all started in a hack day, right? As a digital department, we run a hack day every few months. And the idea of a hack day is it's 24 hours to break away from your normal activities and do something interesting. So it normally starts on a Thursday lunchtime and goes on to a Friday lunchtime, and then we have presentations on the Friday afternoon. At the end of 2011, a couple of years ago now, before a hack day, I was thinking about what to do, and I was introduced to Chris Moran, our digital audience editor. One of his responsibilities is search engine optimization, SEO. Now, sometimes that's a bit of a dirty word, but I prefer to describe it as enabling people who want to find our great content to find it. That's my definition of SEO, at least. The tools he had at the time, so we had a third-party analytics tool. We still do have a third-party analytics tool in place. But that tool had a lag of about 4 hours. So he couldn't see the effect of any changes he made until 4 hours later. Even worse, by the time that data came through, it was aggregated by the hour. So his ability to learn and explore and understand what's worked was very, very limited. Now, as developers, we've rightly pushed continuous integration, continuous delivery, and reducing the feedback cycle to our development processes. And I saw the same problem here for Chris, that he just desperately needed that feedback cycle massively reduced. I mean, 4 hours as a newspaper, as a news website, is a very long time. So it was almost useless for him to be able to do his job. Now, my background, I used to run the platform team at The Guardian. So the platform team was this kind of weird team that sat between development and operations. We kind of tried to bridge the gap between the two. We've now disbanded the team because it turned out it was getting in the way rather than helping. But it was good for its time. I spent a lot of my life looking at when our website crashed. It does crash occasionally. When our website crashed, I spent a lot of time analyzing our server log files to understand what was the sequence of events that caused the failure. So I knew that all those people visiting our website that Chris could only find out about 4 hours later, I knew that we had an entry in our Apache server log instantly. So we knew, we had the data, but we weren't taking use of it. So I set myself the challenge of actually, can I, in 24 hours, make use of the fact that we've got the data, we know it, to give some insight to Chris. So here's what I came up in my head with. I thought, well, we've got some Apache servers, they've got log files. I need to get the log files. I can run this thing on my workstation, and I could probably present the data in something kind of HTML-y type thing. That might work. So that was the plan. And then I thought, well, log aggregation, that's a really tricky problem, right? There's loads of tools and stuff that you could do to do log aggregation. It's really complicated, really hard to set up. But I only had 24 hours. So I couldn't get one of the fancy log aggregation tools installed on our Apache servers. I couldn't do that. So here's a trade secret. This is what I did. I set up an SSH tunnel on my desktop and tailed the logs on a couple of our servers. And OK, that worked. So now I'm doing an SSH tail. I read off a couple of the log files on our Apache servers. I wrote a very simple bit of Ruby that pushed that onto a 0MQQ, and I wrote a Scala Play Framework app that consumed that data, that started to consume that data. So now I thought, OK, right, now I've got a big data problem, because I've got to process this data and display really meaningful results out of it. What cool data backend can I use for this? Is the answer probably not Hadoop, actually? Maybe, well, I don't think Storm wasn't really around there. Maybe I could need a NoSQL store. Maybe I need something really fancy like that. I'm also thinking, actually, how on earth am I going to get this done by tomorrow lunchtime? And then I went back and chatted to Chris. And he said, I explained the problem to him, and I was thinking about, how much data we need to store and all that kind of stuff. And he said, actually, you know what? All I really care is what's happening right now. I only need 3 minutes worth. 3 minutes would be fine. That'd be great. And then I did a back of a fag packet calculation, and I realized that's not much data at all. And so I didn't create a data store. I used a Scala list in memory. All of the displays and the display was totally driven just by doing a group by, filter, and sort on that list. So I just stored the Apache events in a list. And then I had a background task that was running that filtered that list down to 3 minutes every now and again. And so towards the end of the hack day, we came up with this. Unfortunately, I don't actually have a screenshot of what it looked like at the time. It kind of looked a bit like this. But basically, it just showed the top 10 articles on our site right now, and where the referrers came from. Now, there were loads of issues with this solution, right? I was only sampling 10% of the data. I was monitoring server log entries, so server events, not user interactions, which is generally not a great thing to do. And I had no filtering for bots or anything else like that. So there were lots of potential problems around this. It wasn't necessarily accurate data. But even in the last few hours of the hack day, when I presented this and showed the SEO team how to access this, watching the delight on their faces was amazing. It was a revolution for them that suddenly opened their eyes and allowed them to do their job, despite all of its faults. When it came to the end of the hack day, the tradition is that we switch off the hack. At the end of the hack day, actually, Chris pleaded with me not to turn it off. And like an idiot, I listened. In the interests of accurate journalism, this is a posed picture. This wasn't actually taken at the time. So we demonstrated, within 24 hours, we demonstrated that there was a need, and we demonstrated we could add value by writing software to meet that need. We learned the importance of listening to what our users actually want, it was very easy to get sidetracked into a fascinating big data processing problem when actually we could make it a really simple problem instead. And that met the user's needs. And one thing that stayed with us is we've learned to focus on what we can do tomorrow, or at worst case, what we can deliver by the end of next week. Anything longer than that, we try and work out how to bring it down to that time period. Sorry. So, we had a hack running. Now, as an architect, I've been really guilty in the past of saying to people, look, okay, you've done your prototype, you've done your spike, you've done your hack. That's great. Now, make sure you throw that away and now write some production quality code to replace it. I don't make sure that none of that prototype leaks in to our production code base. What a waste. What a waste. What is more valuable than code that is actually running, solving a problem, solving a real user need, effectively in production, although it was my desktop workstation? Why on earth would I throw that working code away and replace it with something that was production quality? I realized that actually the reason I argued around to throw away prototype code was because I didn't believe that you could evolve that code effectively forward. Well, hell you can. I'm going to show you how we've evolved that hack day code into what it is today. Over the next 3 months after that hack day, we made some small changes to that. We split the top 20 to between content pages and other pages, as you saw earlier. We had a new page called Recently Published, which scanned our content API, discovered when we published new content, and highlighted things that were getting traffic or getting not. Funny enough, if you just throw URLs out on the web and don't do anything to promote it, it doesn't get much traffic. There were some problems, right? So it turned out that SSH tunnel that was tailing the log files, our firewalls killed that at midnight every night. I fixed that by wrapping it in a bash script with a loop so that it restarted. You know what? It worked. Also, my energy-conscious colleagues and cleaners would sometimes turn my desktop machine off. That was quite annoying. But I fixed that with a big post-it note that said, please do not turn off. It worked. And over those few months, other people, other than the SEO team, started using it. It turned out quite a lot of people, at this point we weren't measuring it, we are now, but it turned out quite a lot of people started using this tool. But, as I said earlier, there's a reason that most analytics packages don't rely on server logs, right? We wanted to move to JavaScript-based collection, so that we have more. We could collect more useful information, things like that browser performance stuff, but also so that we have more evidence that there was actually a real person behind the click. And so we were running here on my desktop workstation. Unfortunately, my desktop workstation was not publicly visible to the internet, so JavaScript collection wasn't going to work. So we had to evolve. So we decided to move to Amazon Web Services, and let's have a look at how we did that. So we started off by writing some JavaScript. That JavaScript created a hidden pixel, which then needed to go and report that somewhere. So you wrote a very small app, actually it's a really simple app, again, Play Framework app, written in Scala, that served a hidden pixel and recorded the fact that this event had occurred. We then shut that onto an Amazon SNS queue. So SNS, Simple Notification Services, is Amazon's technology that allows you basically to fan out events. So you post to an SNS topic, and then you can have multiple subscribers who receive an event based on that topic. One of the things you can subscribe to it is an SQS, a simple queuing service, which is SQS is a point-to-point queue. In reality, those two combined is what most of us would view as a message queue. But we did that because we didn't want that. We knew that we were going to be changing the dashboard. We knew probably we'd break it, so we didn't want our ability to collect data to be lost if we changed the dashboard. Okay, so yeah, and on the end of that SQS queue, we had the same dashboard code, right? This wasn't a rewrite of the dashboard. This was just changing a bit of code that was previously receiving Apache events from 0MQ. And instead, we changed that to receive the JavaScript tracking events that the tracker had put onto the SQS queue. So, you know, it was a significant change, but it was not a rewrite by any stretch of the imagination. Most of the code was still the same. We still did all our processing in memory. We didn't change any of the way that worked. We still just kept 3 minutes in RAM. And importantly, there was no downtime at this point. So the old dashboard was still running on my desktop workstation. Right? When we ran these two in parallel, we had a look, we compared with our users where there were differences. We tried to work out whether those differences were valid or not. And we came to the conclusion that actually, yeah, where there were differences, this way of collecting was actually giving us more accurate data. And at this point, we're processing the entire clickstream of the Guardian. Right? Coming in at the tracker was somewhere between 15 and 25 million events a day. But it all worked. We ran like this for a few months. Oh, sorry, actually, here's the thing. So finally, when we decided that the JavaScript one was better, we changed the code on my desktop workstation to gently ask people to go to the dashboard. In fact, we'd had a flag up there for about a week beforehand, a little notification at the top of the page, and most people had started using the AWS version already. But we eventually switched it off. At this point, we actually so this ran like this for a few months. It was great. I'm just going to grab some water. At this point, we had a couple of we were still processing everything in memory. Turns out that was a bit of a pain when we wanted to add new features, because actually just writing that code to process that event stream was actually quite painful, because every time you wanted to look a slightly different stat, you had to rewrite that code. And we were getting a bit annoyed by that. And also, we had desires actually to now grow beyond the 3-minute window. We decided being able to draw things like the graphs, being able to filter out to a wider time period was important to us. But we realized at this point, actually, this is probably a solved problem, and there's probably a data store out there that can do this for us. So we looked around, and we found Elasticsearch, flexible and powerful open source distributed real-time search analytics engine for the cloud. So real-time analytics, cloud, tick, tick, tick. OK, right, we'll try that. So how do we evolve our architecture to now start using Elasticsearch? So this is where we were at before. What we did was hooked on another listener onto that SNS queue, onto the notification service, processing the live production event queue. We created a little app called Surf, which all that did was took the event off the queue, extracted the bits we needed, and inserted it into an Elasticsearch cluster that we set up. And then finally, we changed the dashboard, created another version of the dashboard that instead of asking questions off an in-memory queue, was now asking questions off Elasticsearch. Now, you know what I'm going to say. This wasn't a rewrite. Right? This was just changing the places in the dashboard where we ask questions to now ask those questions of our Elasticsearch index. We were processing 20, 25 million events a day. We weren't sure exactly how big our Elasticsearch cluster needs to be. We'd never run one before, so we weren't sure how to do it. But we were running in parallel here, so we could experiment. So we just experimented with actually how many Elasticsearchers do we need. The answer at that time was 3 larges, but we were able to experiment and put that and find out for ourselves. Again, we continued running these 2 versions of the app in parallel. set down our users, we allowed them to look at it and see whether we were happy with the results it was giving us and the performance we were getting. And when we were happy that actually this version was great, all we did was flip the DNS entry and switch the old one off. No downtime, no stopping for a complete rewrite. But our architecture at this point is miles away from the little hack that I just had running on my desktop. So one of the questions that comes up at this point is, surely our operations team were hugely annoyed with us for all of this switching around and constantly changing the way we were running. So that story, that story was probably about a year timescale from the move to when we got to Elasticsearch. But surely they were really annoyed. We were constantly changing our mind. We didn't know how many servers we needed. We did change the way we were running stuff. Surely they got really annoyed with us. Well, actually, our ops team absolutely loved us because they had absolutely nothing to do with this at all. We did it all ourselves. Now, this was really scary, right? Running servers in production, that's a really hard, complicated problem. Now, I am massively grateful to the DevOps movement and their emphasis on treating infrastructure as code, because the tools that are available in that area now enable teams to take ownership of their infrastructure. So we picked two. We were using Amazon. When I say pick two, so we're kind of the two that were there. We used CloudFormation and auto-scaling on AWS. The two together revolutionized our thinking about infrastructure and the relationship between running my production boxes and writing my code. So CloudFormation is an Amazon tool that allows you to describe in a kind of, the only way to describe it is a bastardized form of JSON. It allows you to describe the set of boxes that you want to run and the resources that you want to set up as part of your stack. Interesting enough, that's not that dissimilar to a build script. It's a very, very similar problem to one that I already was used to doing and knew how to solve. Autoscaling, the surprising thing about autoscaling is it's not just about autoscaling. It's not just about growing and reducing the number of boxes. What autoscaling lets you do is describe, here's how you create a box like this. Now go and create 7 of them. So it's a way of creating repeatable servers. Interesting enough, one of the really powerful things around it is you can also define a health check on that box and say to Amazon, look, right, if that health check fails, well, throw that box away and start a new one, please. And that makes a whole classes of problem disappear, right? My log files fill up and the hard disk fills. Well, fine, I just kill the box, start a new one, no problem. But interestingly, that model of defining a type of thing and then creating many instances of it, that's what I do in my programming language all the time. That's what I do with classes, right? It's the same problem. Let's have a look at a bit of CloudFormation here. You don't have to understand all of it. I've redacted a couple of bits. A couple of things that are interesting around here. Okay. So your image ID at the top, that says that's the AMI ID for a Ubuntu box of some kind. And then what happens is you start up a blank Ubuntu box. Now I need to get my software on it. I always used to think that was a really, really complicated problem, really hard. But I've got a Java app, right, or a JVM-based app. One of the pros and cons of Java is that we've reinvented the entire world in the JVM. But that's positive, because it means actually you need very little stuff on the box other than the JVM. So you can see what we do. Here's how we get that box from a plain Ubuntu box into one running our app. We install OpenJDK 7. We add an unprivileged user. We do some stuff around extracting access keys and secret keys. Actually, you don't need to do that anymore, but we haven't migrated to the new way of doing it. We go and get, from an S3 bucket, the upstart script for the dashboard. We go and get the Uber jar that we create as part of our build process. And then we run the upstart script. And the upstart script pretty well just says java minus jar, that jar. It's not that tricky. And yet we make this into a really complicated problem far too often. Now, there's so much more. So we've written all of this ourselves. Obviously, we got help and support from our ops team. We chatted to them and understood some stuff from them, but we took full responsibility. There's so much more I could talk about around how our architecture has evolved. Let's have a look at this. But I'm kind of going to stop here because I think you've got the idea of how we've managed to evolve that hack into something that's incredibly powerful today. This is our status app that we hacked up. So obviously, so this shows. So Amazon has lots of really good APIs. It's really quick to knock up really good dashboards like this, right? So each block on here is an auto-scaling group. You can see we've got more auto-scaling groups than the 3 that I referred to earlier, because we've got things like a time machine, the ophan time machine, which captures which captures our network front and stores screenshots of that, so we can look back in time and see how we chose to promote stuff and learn from that. We've got robot tracker, which is a thing that actually hooks into our CDN and allows us to see in real time what bots are crawling. We've got ophan trigger, which is an alerting tool. There's lots of things around here. But you get the idea. We've grown up from a very simple hack to now quite a sophisticated system. And there's never been a stop and rewrite some production quality code. So our lessons from this is that architectures can and must evolve rapidly. And in order to do that, responsibility for infrastructure, operations, and software cannot be split. They are both. They are all just code. And the tools and technologies and platforms to make this possible today are quite are great, and there's been massive evolution in that area. But this is all a very interesting, pointless intellectual exercise. If all of this fancy infrastructure stuff we've done doesn't impact our organization. So how did we get people to engage? How did we get people to engage with the data that we produce to the point today that most of the organization use it? Well, there's a few points I'll cover on that. One is frictionless access. So this is kind of a technical decision initially, but it turned out this was absolute gold dust. We use Google Auth to log in. So we use the Guardian uses Gmail, and so everybody has a Guardian.co.uk Gmail account. So to control access to the system, we just allow you to log on with your Gmail account, check you're from Guardian.co.uk, and if anybody with Guardian.co.uk email address can use this tool. This is quite different to every other analytics tools we've got inside the Guardian. All of those, you have to make a request to somebody to say, oh, please allow me to access this. You then have to go on a training course for a couple of days. And then once you've had your training and your request has been approved, and then probably we've paid the supplier a bit more money for the login, then you can get access to the tool. This was quite different. If people wanted to use it, they could just use it. And that's been a real key factor of the organic growth of this tool. We've very much focused on creating our data simple. As I said earlier, it's all around trying to present data in a way that makes sense to people that aren't data people. So ophan only displays page views. Many other analytics tools will break that down into unique browsers, into visits, and various other derived metrics. Right? I'm not saying those metrics are bad, but when I went to talk to people around the building and talk to editors and journalists, they had no idea what those metrics actually meant. Every one of those derived metrics in some way distorts, has some distorting effect in different ways. But unless you understand how the metric works, you can't understand whether you're seeing the distortion. So we stuck with page views because we can explain page views in one sentence, and everybody understands what they mean. Sure, they distort as well, but it's more obvious to see what the distortion is. We engaged heavily with our users. So we focused very much on presenting data that was actionable and encouraged personal exploration. So all those filters we added wasn't just because we could do faceting in Elasticsearch and it was really easy to do, although that was true, but we added all those filters to allow journalists and editors to explore the data on their own right. We didn't know what to look for. We didn't know what the most interesting things to look for was. And so we allowed them to explore in their own right. Actionable data is a really interesting one. So one of the bars we've got on the page is this onward traffic bar. Okay, so this shows for a particular article, in the dark blue, it shows how many people who visited that article then went on to look at another article. The light blue is how many people who visited the article then went on to go and look at, say, our homepage or another index page like that. And the grey is how many people who looked at the article didn't go anywhere at all. And that's really interesting because you can action this, right? When we've got a great item of content on a topic, sometimes people are interested in other items of content around that topic too. So you can improve the linkage either in the article or around the article and the furniture around on the page. This is a clear action that editors can take to allow people who want to explore more of our great content to explore more. And what can they do? They can see that this bar, and this is what happens. They see that bar, oh, that looks a bit low, and we've got this other item of content about that. Let's link it up. And then within minutes of making that change and putting it live, hopefully they see the bar change. Clear, actionable data. One of our key things is to be passionate about our product. So the entire development team on this product, absolutely passionate about creating this tool. We don't, it's not that we turn up each day and go, oh, well, what's the story card I'm going to implement today? Oh, that's really interesting. We're passionate about it, and we believe that this is a key part of the future of The Guardian, and always have done. What's interesting is that passion is infectious. We've been lucky enough to have a number of really evangelistic users who have pushed other people to use this tool. And as a result, it's spread by word of mouth. Now, Chris, who you had saw the picture of earlier, is one of our main evangelists. Right? He stands up in our daily morning conference where the editors all talk about the news yesterday, and we'll regularly just talk through ophan and remind people that it exists. Having those kind of evangelistic users is a joy, absolute joy. But I think it happened because of the passion that we had for what we were doing. We welcomed feedback. Now this is really interesting because when I was a younger lad, I was at some point. When I was a younger lad, I used to be scared of going and sitting with my users. I was working on a product, but I was scared, even if it was an internal tool, I was scared of going sitting with people because I knew that they were going to ask me to do stuff. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to do what they asked me to do, either because my process didn't allow me to do it, or because it simply wasn't a good idea in the first place. And I was too scared of saying no. I was so scared of having to say no to those people that I just never engaged with them. Well, we widely welcome feedback from ophan, from everybody who uses it. And the simple reality is, we've got loads and loads of suggestions and ideas, and they're great, but we're upfront about the fact that actually, out of all the suggestions we've ever had, at most, very, very most, we've done about 20%, if that. Most things that people ask for, we do not do. But you explain that to people, and they're fine with it. Admittedly, when we do choose to do something, we make sure we deliver it really fast, and that really excites users. So my final point is around how we justified the cost of this project when, as I've already admitted, when we started it, we had no idea what we were going to do or where we were going to go. So how on earth could we justify the cost of doing this? Well, and in fact, I still don't know, actually. I still don't know where we're going to be in 6 months' time or where we're going in 2 years. I have no idea how ophan's going to evolve next. Well, let me introduce you to the development team. There's me, and there's Phil Wills. We're both architects at The Guardian. We've spent, on average, about half our time on this tool. Let me introduce you to the QA team. Let me introduce you to the ops team. And that's it. There's us two. Now, not quite true, actually, because in the background of that picture there, we've got Lindsay, and she's been helping out over the last couple of weeks integrating some Facebook, some better ways of analyzing our Facebook data. But that's it, right? All of this has been done, that's by the two of us. Now, this isn't a skunkworks project. This isn't done under the radar. From the moment of the first hack, we've had full support from Tanya, our Chief Digital Officer, and in fact from our CEO as well. But this extreme resource constraint forced the evolutionary approach. There's a lot of talk, good talk, right talk, around, especially in the startup world, around creating a minimum viable product, the MVP. Now, an MVP when you've got a team of 50 is quite different to the MVP when you've got a team of 2. Phil and I were not prepared to waste a couple of months of our life writing something and delivering something that either wouldn't get used or wasn't that useful or wasn't that actionable. So we always looked to try and break down into small chunks and get feedback from our users as fast as we possibly can. I mentioned earlier that Lindsay is doing stuff on trying to improve our ability to track, to understand where our Facebook traffic comes from and how that's generated. There's loads and loads of stuff you can do in that area, but she followed the same principle and worked out what she could do in a few days that would start the conversation. So she did. She put a whole page up that just shows some very basic stuff around Facebook, showed that, and sat down with the community coordinators and said, OK, here's this. What next? And she's slowly evolving that through. Last cup of water. So in conclusion, I'm going to treat you to a slide with bullet points. Here they are. Never underestimate the massive impact, the massive transformative effect that even small teams, arguably especially small teams, can have on an organization. With rapidly evolving working software, with close collaboration with your users, and with clear, relevant, actionable data. The tools, technologies, and platforms to make this possible have evolved so much recently that I don't believe it would have been possible for us to have created this with a team of our size even a few years ago. But we have done it. It is possible now. And so can you. So strip out the blockers, strip out the unnecessary complexity, strip out the things that get in the way, and make it so. Thank you.
We are almost at time, but I think I can see this now. In comparison to many of the other talks, we have a lot of questions here.
Great.
So I would say we can probably, if you're all okay with it, because there are longer breaks, maybe spend 5 minutes to answer a couple of questions briefly, and if you have deeper questions. And I think 1 or 2 of the questions that you've asked throughout the talk have been answered later in Graham's talk. So, but I think the top one, for example.
When we open source ophan, so we actually started off with open source. At the moment, it's not our plan to do so. It is currently closed source. We would like to open it, but I've got no idea when and if that will happen. The simple reality is, historically, we had enough of a problem on our hands getting our organization to love it as a tool, and so we didn't want to confuse that mission from the danger of our competitors using the same tool. Now, I think we have a commitment to openness, so it's definitely a question we'd like to do, but I've got no plans at the moment, I'm afraid. Did you look at Google Real-Time? The real-time stuff in Google Analytics, is that what you mean? Yeah, we did look at it briefly. It's interesting that a lot of what we've done here is around presenting the actual capturing of the data and storing it in Elasticsearch and querying it, if you like, that was kind of stuff that we just churned out and made work. A lot of the interesting evolution in ophan has been around creating the displays that make sense to our editors and journalists. And I think, we didn't look at it, actually, it's a short answer. Have you noticed a change in the nature of content? So, yeah. Have you noticed a change in the nature of content once journalists can see about popularity? Actually not. So, well, not really. All right. So there's an interesting, there's a historical argument that used to occur inside The Guardian, which I think is one of the things that ophan has helped transform, which is, if we start looking at who's consuming what content, we will inevitably turn into a celebrity-led newspaper like the Daily Mail, a celebrity-led website like the Daily Mail, right? We're inevitably going to degrade our content. Now, I think that dismisses quite unfairly the skill of our editors, right? Our editors are very strong around making sure that we're producing content that fulfills our core mission and our goals, whether or not it's going to be successful. So I don't think it hasn't changed significantly the nature of content we commission. At the moment, it's mostly focused around when we do publish something, making sure we give it a chance for people to see it, right? Because before we had this tool, we would publish lots of things on the web, and nobody could ever find that content, and so the content would die a death, even if it was the best piece of journalism ever. So we focused a lot more on making sure that when we do publish something, we actually give it a chance for people to see it. Okay, why exclude data to go further back? So we don't actually. So we do a couple of things more subsequently. So the real-time dashboard only allows you to see the last 7 days worth of data. So we only store 7 or 8 days in Elasticsearch, and we delete it from Elasticsearch after that point. That's partly because we didn't want to get into the realm of reinventing our traditional analytics tools, because our traditional analytics tools are very good at long-term trending, and they do that job really, really well. So we didn't want to accidentally start reinventing that, so we just kept it down to 7 days. However, having said that, also listening to that SNS event queue is a logger, which writes all of our events to S3 buckets. And at the moment, so we've got the data actually going back from when we first started. And at the moment, we are looking at actually, can we push that data into a data warehouse so we can ask questions? And we're actually doing some experimentation with Amazon Redshift to actually store our long-term data in there. We've done some experimentation with Hadoop as well. So at the moment, it's focused primarily, the dashboard is all focused around the last 7 days, but we are looking at doing that longer-term data. So I think we're out of questions now. So don't forget to vote on the thingy app, what's it? And I'm around for today and tomorrow, so feel free to grab me because I love talking about ophan and I'll bore you to tears. Okay, thank you.